Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about one of the most tense and tragic realities unfolding once again in the Middle East, the renewed wave of drone strikes on Gaza carried out by Israel, and how the people of Palestine are living every day in fear of what might come next. The conflict, which has spanned decades, has entered yet another painful chapter, and the impact on ordinary civilians is devastating. In recent days, Israeli forces have launched a series of targeted drone strikes across several areas in Gaza. The official explanation from Israel has been that these strikes were aimed at eliminating militant targets and preventing planned attacks, but on the ground, the story looks very different. Entire neighborhoods are once again hearing the familiar and terrifying sound of drones circling overhead, signaling the return of uncertainty, loss, and trauma. For Palestinians, especially those living in Gaza City, Khan Younis, and Rafah, every hum in the sky brings with it the fear that another explosion might follow. The use of drones has become a central feature of modern warfare for Israel. Unlike traditional air raids, drones can hover for hours, monitoring movements and striking within seconds. Israel claims this technology helps them target threats with more precision, reducing civilian casualties. However, human rights organizations argue that this narrative hides the growing civilian toll. In many cases, drone strikes have hit residential buildings, markets, and even schools. Families who have already lost everything in previous conflicts are once again forced to run, hide, and rebuild from the ashes. For many Palestinians, life in Gaza has become a cycle of rebuilding and destruction. The region, often described as an open-air prison, has been under blockade for years, restricting the flow of goods, medicine, and basic necessities. Electricity comes only a few hours a day, water is scarce, and medical facilities are overwhelmed. Under these conditions, even a short flare-up of violence becomes catastrophic. And now, with drones constantly overhead, the psychological pressure is unbearable. Parents struggle to comfort their children, who wake up at night crying, fearing another explosion might destroy their home. Israeli officials defend their actions as necessary measures for security. They argue that militant groups operating from Gaza continue to launch rockets toward Israeli territory, targeting civilian areas. For them, the drone strikes are a way to prevent larger escalations and protect Israeli lives. But for many outside observers, the balance of power in this conflict is deeply unequal. Israel, one of the most advanced militaries in the world, uses cutting-edge drones, surveillance systems, and precision-guided munitions against one of the most densely populated and impoverished regions on Earth. The result is a humanitarian disaster where civilians pay the highest price. The fear in Gaza is not just about the present moment, it's about what comes next. Every strike, every rumble in the sky, reminds the population of previous wars that devastated the region. Many people still carry memories of the 2014 conflict, when thousands of lives were lost and entire districts were flattened. They fear history repeating itself. Even when temporary ceasefires are announced, few truly believe they will last. The drone presence ensures that the feeling of peace never truly returns. For the people on the ground, it feels like living in a permanent state of waiting for the next explosion, the next loss, the next morning. In the midst of this violence, humanitarian organizations are struggling to provide relief. The lack of access to basic supplies, combined with the constant threat from above, makes their work almost impossible. Hospitals are running out of fuel for generators, and doctors are forced to operate under candlelight. Many international aid workers describe the situation as beyond crisis. Children, who make up nearly half the population of Gaza, are among the most affected. They grow up surrounded by fear, rubble, and loss, a generation shaped by conflict before they can even understand it. Across the border, Israelis too live in fear of rocket attacks. In border towns, residents often rush to shelters when alarms sound, and the sense of insecurity runs deep. However, the scale of destruction and suffering in Gaza far exceeds what happens on the Israeli side. This asymmetry fuels anger and resentment among Palestinians, who feel trapped between militant groups and an overwhelming military force. They ask a painful question: how long will this cycle of retaliation and revenge continue before someone seeks a real solution? The international community often reacts with statements of concern, calls for restraint, and appeals for peace. But on the ground, little changes. Ceasefires come and go, and each new round of violence leaves deeper scars. The political divisions among Palestinian factions, the Israeli government's security concerns, and the lack of international accountability all contribute to a situation where lasting peace seems almost impossible. For many watching from afar, it's hard to imagine what it feels like to live every day under the sound of drones, a sound that has become a symbol of fear and helplessness for Gaza's people. In recent interviews, residents of Gaza describe how daily life has been paralyzed. Fishermen cannot go out to sea without fear of being targeted. Farmers are afraid to tend to their land near the border fences. Shops and schools remain closed during heavy bombardments. Even weddings and funerals, moments that define human life, have been disrupted or cancelled because of the fear of sudden attacks. For them, normal life has become a distant dream, replaced by survival instincts and constant uncertainty. Psychologists in Gaza report that trauma levels among children and adults have reached alarming levels. Anxiety, sleeplessness, and depression are widespread. Families live in overcrowded shelters, and children draw pictures of drones and bombs instead of playgrounds and flowers. This psychological damage will linger long after the physical rubble is cleared. It is a generation growing up without safety, without stability, and without hope, a generation that has never known peace. Israel's defense establishment argues that drones are one of the most effective tools against militants who operate from within civilian areas. They claim that groups like Hamas and Islamic Jihad use human shields, storing weapons in residential buildings and launching rockets from populated areas. While this may sometimes be true, critics argue that the indiscriminate nature of drone warfare blurs the line between combatant and civilian. When strikes hit homes and kill families, no technological precision can justify the human cost. Each mistake deepens resentment and fuels the very hostility these operations claim to prevent. The political dimension of this conflict also plays a major role. Inside Israel, leaders often face pressure to appear strong and decisive against perceived threats from Gaza. Military actions, including drone strikes, are presented as necessary to maintain deterrence and reassure the public. In Gaza, militant groups use the destruction as proof of Israeli aggression, rallying people under their cause and framing themselves as defenders of the oppressed. In this way, both sides remain locked in a tragic loop, each action by one side justifying the next retaliation by the other. In the wider Middle East, these events once again draw strong reactions. Some nations condemn Israel's actions as excessive use of force, while others support its right to defend itself. Protests erupt in capitals around the world, and social media fills with images of destroyed homes, crying families, and the shattered streets of Gaza. Yet, amid all the outrage and debate, the suffering on the ground continues. The international system, with all its resolutions and summits, has so far failed to bring an end to this long, painful cycle. For many Palestinians, faith and resilience are the only things that keep them going. Despite the destruction, they rebuild. Despite the fear, they continue to live. Parents send their children to schools, even if those schools are half ruined. Doctors continue their work in hospitals without electricity. The human spirit in Gaza remains unbroken, even when everything else seems to collapse around them. But their endurance should not be mistaken for acceptance. They want peace, not just a pause between wars, but a real, lasting peace that allows them to live freely, safely, and with dignity. The drone strikes represent more than just military action. They symbolize the technological and moral dilemmas of modern warfare. Machines can target with precision, but they cannot distinguish the grief of a mother or the fear of a child. They cannot understand what it means to live under constant surveillance, where every sound in the sky could mean death. As warfare becomes more automated, the distance between those who fight and those who suffer grows wider. And in Gaza, that distance feels infinite. What's happening today is not new. It is part of a pattern that has repeated for generations. Each round of violence starts with justification, continues with devastation, and ends with promises of peace that fade before the dust settles. The drones may change shape, grow smaller, and become more advanced, but the human pain they cause remains the same. The people of Gaza are not just caught in a military conflict, they are caught in a tragedy that the world has failed to end. Even as we speak, reports continue to emerge of new strikes, new casualties, and new displacements. Families are moving again, carrying what little they can. The fear of the next attack never leaves them. In this atmosphere, peace feels like a distant illusion. But somewhere within that despair, there remains a faint hope that one day, the sound in the sky will no longer be a drone, but silence, that the children of Gaza will grow up without fear, that both Israelis and Palestinians will finally be able to live without war, without walls, and without loss. Until that day, the world watches, and the people of Gaza waiting for the skies to clear, for the bombs to stop, and for humanity to remember that every life, no matter where it is born, has the same value. The story of Gaza is not just a regional issue, it is a test of global conscience. How many more times must we see this cycle before it ends? How many more families must live in fear before peace becomes more than a word? Thank you for watching, and if you care about this story, share it so that more people understand the reality of what's happening. Awareness is the first step toward change, and silence only helps the violence continue. Stay informed, stay compassionate, and until next time, take care of each other because in times like these, humanity is our only true defense.